You will now see these beautiful faces every Sunday morning.
And you can check out your boy Breno, too.
So, yep. You can come check out my boy Gabe. My boy Gabriel. You know what I'm saying? What's going on, church family? It's your boy Breno coming at you again with another week of D.T.S. Deeper Than Sunday. We're so happy that you came to join us here at D.T.S. This is the place where we take a deeper dive into this past Sunday's sermon, hearing different perspectives and testimonies of our guests and how to apply this sermon practically in every day of our lives. Because what God is doing here at FFM on Sunday mornings is meant to be walked out on every other day of the week. So wherever you're listening, whether you're on the treadmill, picking up your kids from school, or you're at the house, we hope and pray that this video right here inspires you to live out your calling through Jesus Christ. Before we jump into today's message, I want to give an opportunity for my guests to introduce themselves with their names and the icebreaker of the day. What has been the best vacation you have been on?
Go ahead.
My name is Rita Taylor, and the best vacation that I've ever been on, I would have to say, was this past summer when we went out west with our family and spent some time in Wyoming, and that was amazing. So to date, I would say that has been my favorite vacation.
Super cool. And for those of you who don't know, another cool fact that we found out today, we're talking about today's video, is that you were here in the first service of FFM, right?
That's right. Yep, in the FOP building. Yep, it was quite a while ago, and I feel like a new person here with all these new faces and coming back here after being gone for a few years. But this has always been my home, and so it's kind of cool. Yep, to be here from the very beginning. So
yeah, see the full circle.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yep. My name is Gabe Taylor, or I should say, your boy, Gabe Taylor.
Come on, that's right.
No, my favorite vacation, though, it too was this summer. We had an amazing time as a family. Really had an opportunity to see a lot of cool things, but mostly just had an opportunity to really bond as a family and just spend a lot of time with our boys, and and we did see some beautiful country and some things that we had experienced when we were younger. But to be able to share that with our the young men in our family that we're raising, just something that we'll never forget. So it was quite a time.
That's awesome. Like you guys already know, my name is your boy, Breno Aquino.
Did you share your favorite vacation?
And no, I should do that. Yeah, my favorite vacation was my honeymoon.
I knew it.
You already know. Me and my wife went to Miami, Florida for our honeymoon. And that was an amazing week, not only because it was my honeymoon, but, man, we loved it. It was amazing, and God did some incredible things on that week. So as you guys already know. But yeah, it was great. Yeah. And yeah, before we start, thank you guys so much for hopping on here.
Yeah.
So great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Gabe and Rita helped lead the church plant in Kalamazoo 7 years ago, right?
Right.
Yep.
7 years ago. So now they are back here in Centerville. So if you guys see them Sunday morning, please, if you haven't, introduce yourselves, welcome them home. You know, it's great for them to be back.
Yeah.
So you guys ready to jump in?
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Pastor Don has been taking us through the Renewing Our Vision series titled Win the Day. And this was the last sermon of the series titled Seed the Cloud. So Pastor Don's main point from this message was pretty much saying that our church has been here for over 20 years. Many prophetic words have been given and many have been fulfilled. We have seen God's faithfulness over this ministry too much for us to sit back and not keep moving. The vision of this church is more than a sermon series. We can't just move on. We can't just be content. It's time to go even harder for the move of God over this ministry. Let's see the cloud. This was an amazing message, just of inspiring us and motivating us to not just be content, not to just sit back and enjoy the now, but to press harder, even more, and because God always has so much more for his people. So it was a great message, but I also want to hear from you guys. What's something that stood out to you?
Well, for me, I guess when in the sermon when Pastor John starts talking about vision, that's something that has just drawn me in all the years of this church. And honestly, the plant, that's what drew us to the plant is the vision of the church, and more than that, just the vision of what God has for this church and for the church as a whole, but for Firm Foundation in particular. We've heard that for years and years of what that vision is, and we just felt called from the Lord to be a part of that, and honored to be able to do that. But to hear Don continue to talk about that, that really stuck out to me, and to see all the different faces here, and to see all the people standing and ready to continue that vision, and ready to press in, and almost with more excitement and more zeal than even ever before. It's just an amazing thing to see. I mean, however many years later, it's even as much, if not more, than before. So as to hear some of those same words, but with even more, I guess. That's really one of the things that stood out to me the most.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For me, I think I wrote down when he was talking about he shared the story of the the singer who thought that that there was a problem with their vocal cords because they weren't able to reach the high notes, when actually it was their ears that were the problem. And so when he was talking about that, we all have problems, but a lot of our problems are because of a hearing problem, and that we're not hearing correctly. And that really stood out to me, because I think sometimes we borrow so much more trouble than what we actually need to. And
It's true.
I'm by nature, I'm somebody that worries a little bit about things. I have a tendency to do that. But I think sometimes if we would work more or be more persistent about hearing from God, instead of worrying about things that we've created, or borrowing problems when it might not actually be a problem to begin with, we'd all be a lot better off. And again, just going back to the vision, we were gone for a while, but just like Gabe said, to hear him, just continually talk about the vision that Firm received so many years ago, is just really, really powerful. Because there has been really powerful words spoken over the church, and so it's great that it's still alive and well and hasn't been forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So all that. Yeah. So the verse that he gave us was 1 Kings, or the reference that he gave us was 1 Kings 18:41 through 46. So we'll read that. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. "Go and look toward the sea," he told his servant, and he went up and looked. "There is nothing there," he said. 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." The 7th time the servant reported, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." So Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain came on, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, and, tucking his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel.
So Don asked the question, how do we seed the cloud? The first way is this. You seed the cloud with persistence. Living the blessing of the promise takes persistence. If you want to dream big, you have to think long. If you have to play the long game. Many people in the scripture saw God's faithfulness in the long game. To be specific, on the seventh day, the seventh attempt, the seventh journey, and the seventh prayer. What if they would have stopped on the sixth? Don't let contentment or laziness on the sixth day keep you from the promise on the seventh day.
Man, that was so good, wasn't it?
That was really powerful.
Yeah, like even the moment when he brought up those pictures from 2 weeks ago.
I know.
Yeah.
He was like, what if that's just day 6?
Right, right. So the first question is, discussion question is, we're going to talk about is, what are some of the practical ways we can stay persistent when the journey of faith gets difficult?
So when I looked at that question, I mean, practical ways, the first thing that came to my mind was you just have to keep showing up. I mean, because when things are difficult, I mean, when you don't want to, or you feel like it's going to be a struggle, or something very practical is just to get there and show up. Because I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to withdraw, or, I'm just not going to go to that, or I'm just going to, skip out on this, or, and especially, depending on where you're serving in the church or what areas you're serving in ministry and other areas too. But I think you have to be there in order to see what God is doing and to watch his plan come together. So I guess for me, that was just the first thing that popped into my mind was you have to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over and over,
Yep,
even if you
so
don't,
simple.
even if you don't want to, and let God do the work.
Yep. Sometimes that's the only faith step we need in a day is just to show up.
Just show up. Like, okay, God, I'm here. Like that was all I could. That was all I could do, and He does the rest.
Yep. That reminds me of Sean Brown. You guys know Sean. He sings around the team. I think it's the funniest thing. Not many people notice, but every time he comes to worship practice, he has a tiring job, and he usually comes to practice straight from work.
Oh.
And he's dead tired. I'm like, what's up, man? How you doing? He's like, we're here. We're here. Every single week.
Yep.
It says in Hebrew, like we're running the race with endurance.
Right.
It's not a sprint. It's a long
Right.
it's a long journey.
Right.
It's the long haul, And until we see Jesus, we gotta think the long game.
Right.
We have to stay persistent because, man, sad truth is how many people have given up on day 5,
Right.
on day
Oh, right.
6,
Right.
Day one.
day 1. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's hard
Right.
sometimes,
it is.
man. But
Missed
the goal, the hope, the journey, with vision, and when you can truly, if you truly believe, and you have that vision, when you know what's truly there for you, day 7's worth it.
It's worth it. Man, that should be a quote right there. Like day 7, it's worth it. And it's so crazy how day 7 is only a moment,
Right.
right? But that moment surpasses the long journey
Right.
Yep.
going up to that moment. I want to take some time just to hear from you guys. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, you guys had a long journey, a new exciting journey of planting a church for the first time. And you guys are part of the first planting team of FFM.
Right.
Something that we all stepped into that was brand new in every aspect. But you guys really stepped into that faith, something that many believers wouldn't do, and it's been amazing to see from the outside. But I want us to spend some time just to hear from you guys, how was God faithful to the two of you on this journey with FFM Kalamazoo? What were those day 7 moments? How was it on those day 4s, day 5s when it felt hopeless? Like, what did God do in this journey?
Well, yeah, there was. I can say, through those 7 years, I think did strengthen our faith a lot. To be honest with you, because there were a lot of those day 4, day 5s, and with the Sneeds and a lot of the other families that that we were there with, we leaned on each other a lot. There were some hard days, but there was a lot of good days, and there was a lot of days where we saw salvations, and that made every rough day no big deal, but we continue to see, even after not even being there, we just continue to see the fruit of just a few faithful, and the faithfulness of this church, and this church walking out the prophetic word that was given to them all those years ago. Most of the people that sit here on Sunday don't have any idea, and we'll never know, and that's great. I mean, I think that's the idea. We'll never know, but the faithfulness of the leadership of this church and everything to follow through, and to begin to follow through with the prophetic word that was given to plant churches. How many lives have been changed? When we first started, and you could ask Brian, in our Brian's, one weekend we thought we should be 6,000 people deep, right? It's just how we're wired, but it doesn't take long, and you start thinking about the different people that you've seen change and grow, and the different people that you've seen that might not even be there still today,
Right.
but the different salvations that you've seen, and the family trees that you've seen changed forever.
Yeah.
And that's from a faithful few, and that all starts from this church walking out. And when I say this church, I'm talking about Centerville, walking out the prophetic word that was given. And that's, that all kind of ties to that. To me, that's that day 7 stuff, right? That's that when you see those salvations, I mean, it doesn't get much more day 7 than that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I even had the pleasure of a gentleman that we, shortly after we got up there, a guy that I know we planted that church, was a coworker of mine. We had invited him. He was going through some tough personal stuff, anyway,
You don't see this very often, Breno.
invited him to church, and he came a little bit, but didn't really stick. But I continued to ask him how he's doing, and offer to pray with him every once in a while. And
That was early on when we were.
that was first year.
In the Alamo.
And just did that, and continued to do that, and continue to do that. And so here we are 7 years later, and he told me the other day, it's not in our church, which to me is fantastic, because I don't really care about what 4 walls it's in. I mean, that to me is no big deal. But he told me the other day that he got saved.
Wow.
And
He's been attending regularly, and
yeah, he's been attending regularly for over a month now, and so talking about this, it's it's literally 7 years, almost to the day, really.
from when the seed was planted.
Yeah, and so we were talking about before we got here how we just continue to see this 7-year thing, and boy, our God is so faithful.
Yes.
You know?
It is. Wow.
Yeah.
But to see that, and to see, he's got a young daughter, and he has zero experience with church, and to see and have him come to me and start being so excited and talking about what he's learning in church now, and and talking about the conversations that he's having with his daughter now, and it's just so exciting, and then he said, he told me that he said, thank you so much for not giving up on me. But again, without planting that seed early on, and that's what he said too. He apologized for not. I said, I don't care if you're at our church.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love for you to be there. I think we have
Yeah.
a wonderful church. But at the end of the day, I don't really care what four walls you're in.
Yeah.
I care that you're going to heaven. But again, without the faithfulness and planting the seed, doing the work up front, and the church being willing to plant that out, I don't believe those two lives that and then how many lives are going to be changed because of those two lives,
Yeah.
and that doesn't happen, or that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
so, and there's just story after story after story from that little church in Kalamazoo, so
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, countless ways that God that God has been faithful to us. But when we started out, and I was actually a little bit. Gabe actually kind of sprung it on me. This is something else that probably a
She
lot of
brings
people
this up all the time.
probably a lot of people don't know is that this was our home. I mean, I don't like to change things up. I like a routine. I like to just keep on doing what we're doing and stay where we're comfortable. And when Brian brought up the idea of doing this church plant, and I found out later that at the elders meeting, Gabe said, I'll go, and jumped up and volunteered to go with him. And then came home to me, and I had a newborn baby, and all this other stuff. And he said, yeah, I told him we would help with a church plant. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And he's telling me like a little bit more at a time. Like, he didn't tell me the whole story like all at once. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, how? I mean, I told him maybe like for a year, we might, like, we would be willing to commit, like, but we'll see. We'll just see what happens. And I told him that you would help on the worship team. I was like, okay. So I'm thinking of like a rotation, I'll just say. And then come to find out, no, it's every week. And no, you're going to be helping lead. And, oh, no, then when we went out for dinner the first time with Brian and Melinda start talking about all this stuff. And I was like, where's everyone else at? Like, and they're like, oh, it's just the four of us for right now. Like, that was like, what is going on? Anyway, there were some specific prayers that I had, like, that were we have 3 children, and we had a newborn, and our older boys were 7 and 9 at the time. And my specific prayer was, initially, my concern was for them going into a city downtown, and I thought, what is this going to do to them, for them or to them? And instantly, God used people to share things with me that they had no idea what was even being discussed and what I was going through, and people shared with me things randomly about how my boys were not future leaders, but they're today's leaders, and they're even at a young age. And I was like, just over and over, God gave us, just confirmed that it was what we were supposed to do, and that He would take care of them too, because He was asking us to do this as a family, and that they were going to be involved. And so we had seen God be faithful enough times to know that, like, this was new, this was really scary.
But He's not going to stop being faithful.
But that He wasn't going to stop being faithful. And sometimes it's scary to jump in with Brian and follow when he gets everybody knows Brian knows that. No, but we just saw him faithful enough times. This was probably the biggest step of faith that we had taken in our marriage and with our family and stuff, to do something like that. But you talk about the 7.
If I just stop in, but it was the biggest step, but it also, when you're faithful, and when you're persistent, and when you're in tune, and when you're praying, and when you have that communication with the Lord and everything, you know when the Lord's calling you, and you just know. You know what I mean? Some people might talk of an audible word or this or that or whatever, but there just was no question of what the call was.
Yeah.
You know, so absolutely, it's faith or whatever, but when we have that faith, and we've seen the Lord be so faithful to us, when He says do this, for me personally, I've tried this life on my own, my way, did not do it well.
Yeah.
So when He says do this, that's what I'm gonna do, and my wife is so faithful, and I don't recommend doing it and telling her the way I did that or whatever, but she's so faithful, and she went along with that, and then we just watched the Lord. I mean, we've seen the Lord just honor that every day.
Well, yeah, the really neat thing about this Don's sermon talking about the 6th and 7th day, when we started out, we said, okay, maybe a year, we'll just commit to help get things going, and then we said, we're not going to put a time frame on it. We're just going to trust that God will let us know when it's time, and we're going to serve here as long as He wants us to, and when it's time, we'll go back to Centerville, or we'll go if He calls us somewhere else. We'll just see. And again, hearing, we were just dedicated to hearing what God had for us, and until then, we were just going to keep doing what He had put in front of us. So there was peace, I think, is what Gabe was saying. Like, it seemed big, but there was also peace in knowing that it's what we were supposed to do. And time and time again, with these people that we saw come in as new believers early on, and then being able to watch them grow in their faith and learn, and now, like, up until like the last Sunday that we were there, watching them operate in their gifts and bringing their families, and like Gabe said, changing family trees.
Yeah.
When people say, when they just look at numbers and say it's kind of a small number, is that discouraging? Because you guys, a lot of people have served and worked really hard for so many years, and we're like, let me tell you about our friends, these people here. Have you met this family here? Like, it's not discouraging at all when you look at what God has done, like he was saying, with some of these families, and being able to, and for God to show us that before we left. And we actually started the church it was like January 4th. Of 2015, and then we didn't plan it this way, but when we felt like the Lord spoke to us, there was just no question when it was time for us to leave. And our last Sunday was January 20th then of this year. So this 7 year, it was exactly 7 years for us. And so I had never thought about it like that until, we didn't plan it like that. But then coming back here, and then Don, his message about this exact thing, and God's timing. And then I think, like, if we had decided, like, we're ready to leave, on year 5 or year 6, and in some of the roles that we were serving and helping in and leading, like, with the children's ministry, I was leading that, and we had been praying for someone to take over that who felt called to it. And the person that took over then felt like last year, like God started stirring it in her heart and led her to that. And so it took about a whole year for that to kind of come about. And then at the end of that time frame, it was when it was the right time. And for him, like, he had a lot of different responsibilities too, but having someone there to run the sound and stuff, that it took time, and then for someone to really take ownership and feel like that was their. So we were able to watch all these things happen. And if we had said at year 5 or 6, like, we think we're done now, and not truly waited to hear from God, like in His timing, we would have missed so many of these moments where it all came together.
And we had opportunity on our last Sunday, or me in particular, had the opportunity to watch a couple men who were, we watched come in as new believers, and then I was able to watch them, operate in a way, and again, in year 7, as seasoned leaders in the church. And it was just as we were walking out, basically we felt like it was just the Lord saying, I got this,
Yeah.
Well, not
guys,
that we had any doubt that
but
people
it was just,
weren't going to be able
but
to, but God gave us
I
a
think
gift
it was,
of just like,
of
seeing everything. And then on the last Sunday, they announced that like the offer was accepted on the new building, and they're going to be moving to, and it was something that we had been wanting for ever since we started it was like, and then it was like, yes, this is happening. And God also gave us just so much peace and excitement about what's going to happen.
Like it
there.
was just that a total peace about being able to.
And we shared earlier, like I was there for the first Sunday of Firm Foundation, and then this was he and I started dating a couple years after that, and then he joined me there right away too. So this has been our home, but it's not been difficult to come back here, but it was difficult to leave relationship. Like it's bittersweet.
It was way more difficult than I thought it would be.
When you form relationships like that with people in a play, and you meet with them and you share things with them, and it's way deeper than so that was difficult, but there was just such an overwhelming peace, and God just over and over again just showed us, this is going to be okay. This is going to be okay. This is going to be okay. And it was just so clearly His timing. And then we also felt really, really specifically like God was asking us to really invest in our children for a time, because they've been serving with us as well, and they've not complained. They don't. They're workers too, and they just don't complain about getting up at 5:30 on Sunday mornings. That's what we've been doing for several years, and they just help wherever it needs to be. You grew up like that, you know exactly what.
Oh yeah.
And so we felt like God was specifically saying to Gabe and I, this is time for them. Like this is a season of, you guys really need to pour into them. And then our first Sunday here, your message was specifically to the young people, and how we need to, there's a revival coming, and we need to pour into the youth.
Right.
Second Sunday here, Don shows the vision for the youth building, and we need to pour into our young people and the time frame and stuff. So I just also think, as far as like God proving that He's been faithful, He's continually reaffirmed like that we were hearing from Him, and like His timing is
so much better than ours.
So much better than ours. If we had left, at one point where we were like, we're tired, we're gonna, or for some reason we decided, we think it's time, or whatever, like it's just to watch all of that come together, and then just to get the affirmation too, because I love when God shows you that as well, like this is the right time and this is the right thing, and so that's been really, really exciting as far as that goes.
Wow.
Just the peace that has come with it.
Man, that's amazing, guys. Thank you so much for sharing just about that testimony of God's faithfulness. And anyone who's listening to this, like, they are a true testament that God is faithful from the beginning to the end of a season, of your lifetime. Whatever it is, God will remain faithful.
Yep.
I want to close this time here with our call to action. Every D.T.S, we give a practical application of like, okay, we've talked about His faithfulness. We talked about how good He has been what's next. And something we encourage you all listening, whether you're on YouTube or podcast, is this. Find practical ways to be persistent in your faith and do it with bold prayer. Consistency beats intensity every time. Watch God be faithful. That is our encouragement to you, to go out and find different ways in your life that you can remain persistent in your walk with God. And he's going to surprise you just as he did with the Taylors. Can I pray for us?
Absolutely.
Yes.
God, we love you. Thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to come on here on D.T.S. and to talk about your goodness and your faithfulness to us. Lord, you have been faithful from the beginning of time, and you will continue to be faithful to us until you come to receive your bride. God, I pray for each and every person listening to this episode. I pray that they can be inspired to go out and live the purposes that you have for their life. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys once again for hopping on here on DTS.
Thanks for
It's been a
having
great
us.
time.
It's an honor to be here.
Oh, yeah. And for those of you who are here listening and maybe you don't go to FFM, I always do this on every episode. Here is your personal invitation to church. You should come check us out here at FFM, Firm Foundation Ministries in Centerville, Michigan. Every Sunday morning starting at 10 a.m. we have service here, and you will now see these beautiful faces every Sunday morning.
And you can check out your boy Breno, too.
So, yep. You can come check out my boy Gabe. My boy Gabriel, you know what I'm saying? Here at FFM. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to DTS Deeper Than Sunday, and we'll see you next week.